So for my high school movie, I picked a movie that is, thank you.
Oh,
thank
yeah,
you,
drum roll,
thank you.
please.
Very much about high school, very much not about high school. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Bow, bow, bow.
Yeah, I think that everyone can agree that it is a classic film in the history of cinema.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you can't talk about the 80s as a whole without Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
I
and
mean,
don't
imagine not liking Ferris Bueller.
You can't.
Yeah,
it's a
red flag.
You can't not like it. It's such a
think
good,
I've ever met somebody
fun, feel-good
dislikes it.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can't talk about the history of cinema without it.
Yeah, I think, and especially for me personally, it was a movie that I found while I was in high school.
Yeah.
And, like, we're going to talk about some other movies that kind of fall into different areas, different parameters for, like, high school movies. But I like this one so much because it's a movie that's very much so, it's a high school movie that's very much so about not wanting to be in high school. And I
Yeah.
mean, like, most of the movie doesn't even take place in high school
No,
because they
most
just,
of it
like,
doesn't.
they
Because
just
they
break
play
out.
hooky,
They want to get
yeah.
out of here.
It's really just the principle.
Yeah, and that struck a chord with me when I was in high school because I said, "Man, I don't like high school either." And I think, yeah, and I think if you know me even slightly, Ferris Bueller being a key childhood teenage moment
Yeah.
for me
What?
might track just a
No.
little
Wait,
bit.
Well,
wait,
if it helps, Matt.
Uh-huh.
Really?
The first time I saw Ferris Bueller was with you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I should.
Yeah.
Are you-
that
Matt
tracks.
showed
Are
Ferris
you
Bueller to me,
saying
too.
the group of friends that has a film podcast didn't have the best high school experience?
No, we are all so cool.
What?
You know,
I
I was
was-
pretty cool in high school.
Oh, okay.
Actually,
That
Dan,
makes-
shut
that
up.
makes
Dan
sense.
actually
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
Dan had a lot of
Dan
friends.
was like, Dan,
This is
the-
not a
the way
bit.
that I
Dan was
would-
really popular.
That makes one of us.
The way I would describe Dan in high school was like he was running for the governor of absolutely nothing. Like every single lunch, Dan was the diplomat. Dan, there were no friend group boundaries. There were
No,
no
so you
cliques.
know
there was
how-
just Dan. Dan would just go up to every single clique table
Yeah.
and be like,
Hey, how you
"Hey
doing?"
guys, how you
No,
doing?
you know
Hey
how
guys,
there's
how
the
you doing?
cliques.
Hey
Everyone
guys, how
has
you
their
doing?"
assigned booth, table, whatever
Yeah.
you got going on, and everyone sits with their friend group. Dan just wandered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1 week he'd be with somebody over here, and the next week he'd go this way, and everyone was Dan's friend. He had an extra chair at
every
every
table.
table.
So, I mean-
I'm a businessman.
yeah.
I mean, in a way, I wandered, but that wasn't because I had friends. That was because I had none.
Nice.
Unfortunate for you. Anyways.
Yeah, no, let's get to Ferris
Sucks
Bueller.
to be Eric.
Yeah, whatever. I didn't know what to say there. It was just sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, great movie.
classic,
Yeah.
classic film.
Yeah.
It's really fun, but also if you break it down in forms of like being a well-structured point A to point B to point C movie, it is. It's very basic in the structure and the flow, but it's super fun. All the scenes feel unique and different. It takes a couple twisty turns, like the scene with the car where he's trying to roll back the mileage.
Yeah.
There's some gravitas, there's some seriousness, but it's mostly like
Yeah.
a playful, fun take.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I-
just like
Yeah. No, go ahead.
yeah, no, that's what I was gonna say. Like it's just like a very good like hangout movie.
It's a John Hughes
Like
show.
there's not much going on with the plot. It's just sort of a day in the life.
Yeah.
But like you learn
sometimes-
about them, they change. It's a fun time.
And
You
I
don't
think
always need the
Yeah.
complicated plot.
No,
like
you
Eric
don't.
said, it's just like pretty straightforward,
And-
pretty simple. But like I think that works very well for this genre and then this movie specifically.
Yeah, and I think specifically with high school movies, especially like the John Hughes era, like Breakfast Club just being like the most notable, I'd say,
Obvious.
just the easiest example. It's very self-important. It's very, not to say that it's a bad movie, but it gets, very existential. We have all these social cliques. They hate each other, but then they learn to accept each other,
They're
and
just kinda
everything's
teenagers,
good.
man.
Yeah, but like you kind of always, it's funny and it's dramatic, but it has this sense of self-importance where like everything's very serious. Ferris Bueller, I think, has an even bigger heart than a lot of those movies, but
Agreed.
does it in a very unsurprising way because it's so funny. You kind of don't realize how much you care about these characters, so that when it does get existential on these ideas of like Ferris Bueller is basically running from high school because he hates it and like doesn't know where he's going to end up after it and everything.
Yeah.
Like those ideas, I think, are like come at you in a very surprising way because you're having such a good time with the movie that.
Well, and he's kind of a silly character.
He's having fun, but then like it has that kind of like it kind of ends on towards that note of like it's kind of like an old western in a way where it's like he's the outlaw bandit.
He's the man
like,
with no name.
yeah,
you know?
and he's on the run, and it's like your days are coming to an end one day,
Yeah.
partner.
He's the constant, and the people around him are the ones
I
changing.
think it's the most expanded upon John Hughes movie from the concept of what do I do after high school? Because in every John Hughes movie, and we're going to talk about another one later, spoiler alert, not going to say which,
No.
but they all kind of explore
that?
this idea of
Take 4.
what do we do? Like, what do we do after high school? I don't
Yeah.
want to do anything. And I think it's even more prevalent today where, like, you're even more hyper-focused. You leave high school, you have to pick a career.
Yeah.
You have to go to college, you have to pick a major, and you have to know what you want to do. And it's almost frowned upon to switch your major or, like, pick something else.
Yeah.
Where it still makes this film relevant because when you leave high school, you don't know what you want to do with your life.
Yeah.
You're
No,
like,
and
I gotta
everyone
make
pretends
this.
that you do know. They're
Everyone
like, no,
pretends.
you'll know. You'll get there.
And Ferris doesn't. He doesn't pretend like he knows what he's going to do. He just wants to live in that moment, live in that day, go to a baseball game, go to a parade.
And who can fault him for that?
And who can fault him? And it's
Boy's
a really,
living his life.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
really good look into that. And I feel like out of all the John Hughes films, this one really explores that idea the most and has a lot of comedy. Like the principal scenes are really just in there to be funny.
Yeah, and I think specifically, like, again, we talked about a lot of John Hughes. They feel very specific to a point of time. I think Ferris Bueller feels very set in the 80s, but a lot of the ideas and a lot of the characters feel like they could be at any time at
It's
all.
something you can
Timeless.
always relate to.
Yeah, they feel like I was just kind of sitting here thinking, and I was like, I don't think we could make Ferris Bueller today, but like I feel like
You
the
could.
ideas are absolutely
Yeah.
still there. It would be like different, like running around Chicago, small town, social media, like the world's a lot bigger, yada yada
You
yada.
wouldn't
all
have
that.
the
all that
scene where
nonsense.
he's in bed and it's
Yeah.
faked. You'd have like a way easier way to do that.
Yeah,
but like
yeah. But like the ideas,
no, but the
like the
characters,
spirit, I think
yeah.
is still
I
there.
think the character of Ferris Bueller could still exist in
Yeah.
this.
I think a lot of
time.
John Hughes movies are 80s movies.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a movie set in the 80s. And that's where it differs from a lot of them. Where like Breakfast Club is cut and edited and paced like an 80s movie,
Yeah.
whereas Ferris Bueller is a movie set in the 80s but could happen in any time period, really.
Yeah, and I also feel I feel it's interesting because I was looking into this a lot more recently because I knew we were going to talk about this, and they've like discussed doing like a Matthew Broderick like Ferris Bueller 2 at some point, and pretty much everybody was like, no, we don't want to do that because a lot of the magic and the glory of Ferris Bueller is that like it is so idyllic, like it lives in such a bubble that like you don't really, it makes you think about the like honest sad reality of who Ferris Bueller will be after high school, but it doesn't confront you with it. Like
Yeah.
it makes you think about it without really having to tackle that. It is such, and like for me it was always like just such an escape movie. Like it has those ideas that are kind of terrifying to look at and like ideas of the future and like life and what you're going to do with yourself, but it tells you that it's all going to be okay. And
Yeah.
like at the end of the day, Ferris Bueller gets away with it all.
Yeah.
And
he does.
ends with him with that big smile on his face, and he just goes, life moves pretty fast. Like it just ends in such an idyllic way where it has these very harsh realities within it, but doesn't feel the need to confront you with them at that moment.
Yeah,
in
Yeah.
time.
I don't want a sequel because I don't want to know what happened to Ferris.
Yeah.
Also, like, didn't they make like a shitty TV series?
Yeah, they
Yeah.
did. They
Yeah.
did.
We
that
don't
like
talk
got
about
canceled
that.
after a few episodes.
It's not canon.
it's not good.
It wasn't
Like,
even Matthew Broderick. It was like
It's
someone
not
else.
about what.
Yeah, but, like,
the FBCU Ferris Bueller Cinematic Universe. That took me a while to get out there.
But yeah, like other John Hughes, especially like Breakfast Club, like I think it'd be interesting to see them post that movie.
Yeah.
Whereas Ferris Bueller is such this like everybody said like save Ferris and everything. Like he becomes this idea that like I don't really need to see the reality of Ferris's world. I want to see the world through Ferris Bueller's
I
eyes.
also really love the character of Cameron in this movie. I feel
Yeah.
like he's done really well.
Yeah,
And it's very hard for me to call him
So
Cameron
good.
because I just keep thinking of Connor Roy from Succession.
yeah.
Listen.
But Cameron, like,
So
he's
good.
really well done. And like I was saying
Listen.
earlier, like Ferris obviously has a lot of character and personality, but really Cameron's the one who changes throughout the movie.
Yeah.
Because of Ferris's
The
influence.
best scene, in my opinion, is when they're running the miles off the car and he's just blank staring.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just such a... It lingers and almost gives you anxiety
Yeah.
for him, which is not the vibe of the movie. Like, the entire mood switches there.
Yeah.
And you know it's coming because you see the valet guys, like, drive the car
Yeah.
down the hill and kind of, like, off the cliff a little bit.
And really just such good characters overall. Even
Yeah.
Sloane, who like really doesn't get like a ton of dialogue, feel like every scene that she's in feels essential. You
Yeah.
know? Like
Yeah.
she is a very present character.
Again, even the goofy scenes with the principal are like heartfelt because you learn a little bit about how big of a scumbag he is,
Yeah.
and then
And if they
Ferris's
weren't there-
sister's involved,
Yeah.
and then
I'll
if
just-
they're not in the movie, it doesn't hit the same. The whole story doesn't come together.
And
Even the sister and Charlie Sheen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that was a fun subplot.
Yeah, that's
too,
a
you know?
really fun subplot.
Yeah.
And
Charlie
again-
Sheen in this movie.
God, he was in
Yeah,
this
I
movie.
know.
And again, we kind of get all these glimpses of like the possibilities of what Ferris's life could look like after this moment. But like it doesn't want to burden you with that.
And we were
No.
talking about this
That's
with
not what it's
something
about.
else coming on Good Soup a little bit later, but it sometimes knowing what happens to characters kind of ruins the current iteration you're watching of the character.
Yeah.
That mystery, that intrigue builds an archetype that you can create around a character. And I think with art, a lot of times like someone makes it and it's out there and then it's up to how you interpret it. We just
Yeah.
broke down Elvis on the last podcast and like
Yeah.
we all
Check it out.
Yeah, check it out.
Check it out.
We all had kind of different interpretations of it. Matt being like, you really liked that first hour and we didn't, but like that's the beauty of film. It's art. It's kind of up to whoever's viewing it to have that opinion. If we expanded upon Ferris beyond this film, it
Yeah.
takes some of that intrigue, it takes some of that mystique away,
Yeah.
and doesn't ruin it. But
Yeah.
if it's not amazing or what you in particular wanted,
Yeah.
it's going to be impossible to please everyone.
It exists in isolation. It exists in a bubble, and that's the entire point of Ferris Bueller is that it isn't, it's not reality. It's
No.
it's this beautiful idea of what reality could be,
It's a movie.
It's like Annie. It's tomorrow. You
Yeah.
know?
Don't talk about Annie.
At the heart of
You're
it,
not allowed to.
this is a classic movie. And I think that's why it stands the test of time. The story's good, the characters are good, the acting's good, but overall it comes
Yeah.
together as an enjoyable, fun, blockbuster feel movie, but in the John Hughes way where it somehow still feels like a little small
Yeah.
scale.
It still feels very like
It feels
digestible.
personal.
It feels like everybody can watch it, but it feels like it's made for kind of like outside of the Breakfast Club, the normal kids. You know.
It's made more for the
normies.
film
Yeah.
crowd than say
Yeah.
something like Breakfast Club, which I think is made more for like the popular culture.
I think
Yeah.
Matt just said the inverse of what
The
you
inverse?
said. Yeah.
All right, explain, because I'm...
No, I think Breakfast Club is more so. Breakfast Club is more kind of digestible. It's more like high school, the popular kids,
Yeah.
the geeks, the dweebs. Ferris Bueller is kind of outside of that
geeks
social
and the
structure.
dweebs?
Yeah. No, I agree. I was saying more or less like Ferris Bueller feels like a more film. Like it's
Yeah.
it's created and
No,
centered not to be a particular point A to point B, but more of a vibe and a hangout and something that's timeless. Whereas, like we said with Breakfast Club, it's an 80s movie
Yeah.
and it's cut like an 80s movie.
I agree. I agree.